Hi, good afternoon, everybody. We are going to start our webinar, How to Manage Mobile Threats Better. This is not going to be just a bunch of slides. We're going to make it as practical as possible. We're going to show you case studies. We will walk through the basic steps that you need to do for your company and your organization uh, to keep it safe from mobile threats, because 466% spikes happen on zero-day attacks, and most of them are targeted at mobiles. So let's wait for a couple of minutes before your other colleagues and your fellow cybersecurity professionals across all the 4 countries join in. We've got a great panelists. We've got somebody like Krishna who's been doing mobile security for the last 9 years, and we've got Amit Sharma, we've got Rohit Sinha, whom probably many of you have met. So we're going to talk you through a lot of cases that we have experienced across globally, and we're also going to talk. This presentation is going to have a great Middle East flavor as well. So just stay tuned, and then probably we're going to have a great session. We make one promise that we will leave no question unanswered, right? We will answer it immediately. We'll take as much as time as it's needed to give you the answer that we think you deserve. Great. I think the small little story is that we asked a lot of customers in Middle East. Say that we said, hey, what are the topics that you want us to talk about uh, in the webinar? I think one of the top topics that came up to me and Amit was, we want to understand how to manage mobile threats better, and that was one of the key reasons why we started this webinar session. Krishna, if you can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So this is actually a part of, we're doing 9 webinars as a part of the Cybersecurity Thought Olympics. And in case you want, if you have registered and you want to register now, it's all available on our landing page. So we've got different topics, and today's topic is mobile security. If you can go, let's go to the next slide. So we have, like I mentioned, we have 2 distinguished speakers today. Krishna has been doing mobile security since the last 9 years. He's seen the market evolve, he's seen the threats evolve, he's seen the way mobile has grown, how we have developed. And then Amit is from Paramount, and he's always into technology. He's exploring newer options. So these 2 gentlemen will take it up. I think combined between Rohit, Krishna, and Amit, there is probably about 20 odd years of technology experience with some kind of inputs on the mobile part as well. So over to you, Krishna.
Thanks, Mukund. Appreciate the introduction. And Amit, looking forward to the conversation. How are you doing today?
Great, Krishna. Thank you for having you here. And one of the veterans in cybersecurity, especially to the mobile, that really makes me exciting. With that note, let's get into the topic agenda. And I hear a lot of this question in the Middle East. What is mobile security? Why someone should worry about it, right? Because in the Middle East, we have seen a craze of iOS, iPhones coming around. Then you have got Android. There's a lot more thought process about it, right? But I really wanted to understand from you, how do you see mobile security a real challenge in a current environment, right? It's a very fast-paced world, a lot more digitization happening. How do you see this is really, really very important at this age, actually?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Amit, right? And I think it's for those of you, before I answer Amit's question, right? This is kind of today's agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about what the enterprise mobile connected world looks like today, again, threats and trends, attack vectors, myths and case studies. And the reason we chose this agenda, like Amit mentioned, right, is we are a mobile first world today, right? Most of your organizations today are invested in mobile, both on the devices side and the app side, right? Huge upside, but there's also a tremendous amount of risk. And that's really what Mukund and Amit and I wanted to chat about is What is that? And do we recognize it? And are we equipped for it? So let's get into it. Now, this is one of my favorite pictures, Amit, and this will answer your question, right? Every CISO we talk to, especially pick the Fortune 1000, right? This is how they feel, right? They feel like they've embraced mobile with both arms, right? They have given employees access on their personal devices. Some of them have given corporate-owned devices. They're building mobile apps by buying mobile apps. Makes sense, right? Of course, there is business growth, there's productivity, there is customer engagement. I mean, I'm even scared to ask you, how many apps do you have on your phone? I mean, do you know how many apps you have on your phone, right? I can barely remember, right? So in this world, CISOs have suddenly realized that the risk on the device side and the risk on the app side are very different, right? But neither can be ignored, right? And traditional platforms are very different from what mobile is, right? So let me explain a little bit more on what that means, right? Today, if you're an enterprise, right, no matter where you started, the business drivers for your enterprise choosing mobile is typically we hear productivity, growth, and engagement, right? Whether you're automotive or especially if you're a bank, right? I don't even go to my bank anymore, right? I don't want to go to my bank anymore, right? I want to bank from the convenience of my fingertips. But when you ask a lot of enterprises, what kind of apps do you have, right? They have to think for a minute, because when they go back and look, they realize it's not just one type of app that they're invested in, right? There are multiple types of apps. There are apps they're developing in-house. There are apps that have someone else is developing for them, so they've outsourced them to someone else. There are apps that we're buying off the store, right? Think about apps. For example, if you think of Zimperium itself, and we're a small company, we have apps like Salesforce, right? We have Slack, we have Jira, we have Atlassian, we have Expensify, we have Concur. The list goes on and on of how many third-party apps we're also purchasing. Now, all these apps are processing enterprise data. And some of them, if they're customer-facing, are also processing your customer's personal information, right? And connecting to your enterprise infrastructure. Then if we take this and extend this to say, okay, there is a certain amount of exposure for apps, what devices are they running on? Right? You quickly realize it's not one type of device again, right? It is your employees' devices. If you are a BYOD shop, which means you have allowed personal devices to connect to the enterprise, that's one. Two, you might be issuing devices, right? Some roles within enterprises that are a little bit more sensitive. We see this in investment banking and such, where you have to issue them devices. And then you have personal devices. If you're a banking customer, I have 6 banking apps on my personal device, right? So the footprint, your mobile footprint, if you're an enterprise, looks something like this, right? And if you think about this, step back and look at it. If you're in security or an app development space, you suddenly realize there are 2 things at risk: your data and your access across these apps. And the third thing, the more you think about these devices, you realize you are less in control, right? I'm an iPhone user. I paid $2,000 for my phone. I don't think my organization is going to tell me how to use my $2,000 phone. It'll never work, right? So you are exposing a bunch of information and access on devices that don't live inside your perimeter, live outside, right? So suddenly the risk equation becomes very different if you're in the security organization, right? You need to start thinking about this quite differently. And what we see globally, right, is one, we know the risk is real, but everybody asks me, is the threat real? Right? Because we're a security vendor, right? There's always a little bit of that. But we said, okay, what does this threat look like, right? We have over 2,000 customers, and we said, let's give people an understanding of what kind of threats they're facing. So one, on the device, zero-day exploits, right? Everybody understands, right? Zero-day exploit is essentially, you don't have to do anything, right? This is an example where I think Pegasus, in the last couple of years, someone sent you a text You didn't have to read the text and it exploited your phone, right? They've gone up. Vulnerabilities have gone up. Both on iOS and Android have gone up, right? So the device, when I say device, think of the platform, right? Whether you're an Android user or an iOS user, you own the phone. You don't really control it, right? Because there is the hardware that's out of your control. The OS is not really in your control. You have the apps that are not in your control, right? So the platform themselves are evolving and they're maturing as well. Network. And this is the one that's most fun for a lot of us who travel, right? There's 20% of enterprise devices experience an enterprise attack, network attack. And that's not complicated, right? Coming out of COVID, we've all gone back to our old lives. We travel, right? I'm in hotels and airports half the time, and connectivity is more important than security for normal people, right? So we are going to connect to faster networks. And that exposes your enterprise. Man-in-the-middle attacks. And this is one thing that I think everybody should understand is, I always get this question, and Amit, you and I were talking about this before, is what's more secure, iOS or Android?
That's right.
Right? Everybody asks this question. And I always answer that question the same way. They ask me, is iOS safe? And I'm like, safe from what? Right? And that's the question. One is known to be a more closed network, closed system, you might call it. One's a more open system, right? That's just inherent in their DNA. But people forget that if you think about threats like network, you connecting to a bad network, whether you're iOS or Android, won't matter. Absolutely. Right? You clicking on a phishing link, whether you're on Android, iOS, does not matter. Right? Nobody can save you at that point. At that point, it's your cyber hygiene that's getting you into trouble. Right? So one is more closed than the other. So you see more malware on Android, less on iOS. But with regulation, that's going to change as well. So don't buy into the marketing of all of it. I think you still have to keep yourself safe. Phishing, one of our favorite subjects now globally. Again, when we say phishing, we're specifically talking about mobile phishing, right? Just for everyone to be safe, right? Because phishing on your laptop is very different from phishing on mobile. On mobile, when I click a link, it redirects me 100 times and I don't even know where I landed up because the form factor is so different, right? It's hard for you to miss where you just got redirected. Everything looks real. It's a small screen. You can never see the URL in the browser. So it's very conducive to phishing. 75% of sites are optimized for mobile. There should be no surprise here, right? Most of my work email, I first see it on my mobile phone, right? That's just how it is. Even when I'm in the office, I'm walking around, I'm in a meeting, something's going on, I'm always checking, right? So we access a lot of enterprise content on our phone. Malicious websites. This is the key thing about mobile. We never look at the URL in the browser on mobile, right? How many times have you gone back and checked whether something is padlocked or not? We just don't do it, right? The mobile is a very personal device. So we treat it that way, right? We inherently trust this mobile device that we've paid $1,000 for. That's what starts getting us into trouble. Last but not least, app, right? I think, both you and I agree that we would not have paid for our phone if there were no apps on it.
Absolutely.
Right? So when we say mobile devices, apps are kind of inherent that, I want all these apps, right? They mean, as a consumer, there makes my life easier. As an employee, it's productivity, right? And on Android, huge malware problem, right? And you will see this, you Google malware and a ton of stuff will come up. Because if you remember, I still remember 10 years ago when apps came out, they did one thing really well. Fast forward 10 years, they don't do one thing anymore, right? Now you see most apps are almost super apps, right? If you look at the top 10, 15 that you have on their phone, they've done two things, right? One, they've combined communication, collaboration, and commerce. It's almost like every app on my phone wants my credit card information these days, right? So apps have matured, which is also makes them a great target for malware, because if I can get into your app I know who you are. I know where you live. I know your banking information. I know your credit card information. And for an attacker, that's money, right? All those things can be monetized. So on the device side, if you see, these are things our customers globally are facing, right? They're facing threats, risks, and attacks on all these different vectors, depending on where they are, right? Depending on regionality, depending on whether you're Android heavy, iOS heavy, BYO versus corporate owned, but they're seeing these across the globe. With that being said, let's put up the first poll, guys, and get some feedback from the audience.
Yeah.
And folks, please do go ahead and answer the poll. What this really allows Amit and I to do is kind of customize this conversation as we move ahead to what matters to you the most, right? And the question is, do your employees have access to corporate apps and email on their BYO mobile devices? What we're seeing is that 80% of the organizations we talk to are in BYO or are moving to a BYO model, right? They feel that having two devices sometimes is not a great idea in the long term. But please do go ahead and vote if possible, and that'll help.
Adding to that context, now what we have also seen as Paramount, we do a lot more, VAPTs and all those things, and we do social engineering checks and all those things. What we have observed actually that when we do a phishing simulations, we have seen the people not able to recognize more on mobile devices because you cannot see the mobile, the sender header informations, link cannot be checked. You cannot hover your mouse to identify those things. And that becomes a much more blind spot, right? That is really very difficult. The same thing happens with, take an example, your mobile devices for the networking part of it. We are wide open to access any network you like from the mobile compared to the laptops and the desktops in the network, right? You have option of mandatory LAN policy maybe, or you can hard lock only to certain Wi-Fi, but you cannot do that same for the mobile device so easily, right? And that becomes a lot more complex in the security world of it, yeah.
It is, and it only gets worse, right? If I throw a QR code on top of it, now you don't even see the URL.
Absolutely.
Right? And a QR code-based phishing now has become a big problem, even in the US. And I'm sure, I go to India all the time. Everyone's operating off a QR code, right? And you can't even tell where the QR code is going, right? So yeah, this problem, we expect it to get exponentially worse. And our enterprises, our customers are echoing the same thing. All right, so let's move past. Thank you, guys. So we talked about devices, but what about apps, right? I was telling my wife the other day, I finally counted the number of apps on my phone. Okay, 176. I don't even know how I got to 176 apps on my phone. I don't even know half those apps on my phone, right? But the way we operate and the way employees, eventually we're all consumers, operate is that we assume all these phone apps are secure, right? You trust the brand, which means the app must be secure. So we did a little experiment and we said, what if let's assess the top 1 million apps on both the stores and see what we find, right? And it was kind of surprising. What you're seeing on your screen is really the 4 areas that we found security lacking across the board, right? And I'll just go through them real quick. Runtime protection lacking, right? This is essentially saying there was nothing in these apps, and these are all enterprise built or work apps, right? There was nothing in these apps that gave them any visibility if they were getting hacked, right? So enterprises wouldn't know, right? You deploy your app, you have 10 million people download it. If someone's trying to tamper with your app or reverse it, you wouldn't know. Second, data protection lacking. Today, the average cost of building an app, I think, is somewhere around $300,000 to $400,000 here. And I was talking to a customer of ours, and he said, we spent 9 months and $1 million rolling out some very competitive features. My response to him was, without having any protection, it takes 10 minutes and $100 to steal your code, right? And he was a little shocked. He says, what do you mean steal my code? Most of these apps don't protect their code. They don't protect the data. They don't protect the IP inside, which is extremely surprising to us because most of our businesses are digital then, right? We make so much of money, revenue, engagement through the app. Encryption is the other one. Everyone, if you're in security, I think this is something that we grew up with thinking encryption means security, right? Unfortunately, on mobile, it doesn't, right? Whether you use AES, RSA, whatever scheme you want, if you compromise the entire device, there is really no real place your data is safe, right? So you have to make sure your keys, most important in your encryption scheme, they are safe, because that can get stolen on mobile quite easily. But we didn't see, we saw a lot of vulnerable encryption, which means your most important data was unsafe. Code protection, like I said, people don't protect their IP, right? So all of us as employees are downloading apps. As enterprises, we are buying apps, but we rarely assess them for these things, right? We do contractual due diligence, but nobody assesses even the work apps to say, how are you doing from a security privacy standpoint? Are you going to keep my data safe? Are you going to keep my employees safe? Right? And this is 1 million apps. So this isn't 10 or 20. This seems to be a widespread problem that we're seeing. Now, why I get this question all the time, right? Oh, mobile is not a priority. Why should mobile be a priority, right? We have servers, we have laptops. I'm more worried about this. I'm more worried about. And the key thing to understand is, if you think about your laptop, how much access it has, right? Your mobile devices are going in that direction as well. But the difference is you can lock down your laptop, can't lock down your mobile phone, and your mobile processes a ton of information on the device. And this is the part that I think a lot of people sometimes tend to forget, right? They will tell me, oh, we have a firewall. Oh, we have some kind of a network inspection type of security on the server. We have API security. We have identification and authentication. But the truth is, most of your data is leaving your network and being processed on the device where it gets stolen, right? And if they're able to look inside your app, they can see the internal infrastructure you're accessing. They can see your supply chain, right? And access that as well. So that's the dual nature of a mobile device. When you think about mobile, this is what you've done, right? You've let data go out, and you've let bad actors actually see the endpoints and the infrastructure and the access it has. So they can go the other way as well. So there's an exfiltration problem as well as an infiltration problem. And like I said before, big difference with mobile, which is unlike web apps, unlike your laptops, unlike servers, the device lives outside your control. You're rarely going to be able to tell your employee how to use this personal device. A lot of corporate-owned devices are being opened up for some personal device use from what we're seeing, right? And that's asking for trouble. Because once you allow a personal device to access enterprise data, we know that mobile has a bunch of entry points, right? This is not new, right? From phishing to malicious apps to malicious websites. There's an endless ways of compromising the device and the app. And this is the fundamental difference when it comes to security approaches, right? All of us have something for our laptops, something for our network, something for our servers. But the approach for mobile has to be different because of this one big reason. It's outside your perimeter and outside your control. Let's do another thing. Guys, let's pull up the second poll. All right. Now, I'm sure a lot of you folks have some combination of BYO or corporate owned. And we hear all the time from this part of the world that they are using an MDM or a MAM. I wanted to see if this is the case even with the audience here, are you using, whether it's an Intune, an Ivanti, Workspace ONE, are you using one of these platforms, right? And there's a question later that Amit and I are answering about, what is the difference, right? Why is mobile security different? Because I think there's a big notion around the market saying, well, MDM is security, MAM is security, which isn't. but I'll hold off on that question till later.
Sure. Krishna, meantime, as the customers are or the participants are filling this question, how do you see the mobile security has become much more important? Is it due to the rapid development of mobile apps, or is it not following the right frameworks that is becoming much vulnerable in the mobile app space? I'm not talking about device at this point of time, but mostly from the app prospect.
Yeah, I think a couple of things have gone on, right? And that's why I say apps have become multifunctional, right? They do a lot more, right? And the big reason why mobile apps can do more and deliver that much of value is because they can access that much more information, right? You love your apps because they deliver not just value, but a personalized experience. To deliver a personalized experience, you need to access personalized data, right? So there's a lot more information that's being accessed. And the big reason we're saying is today, apps are built like Legos, right? 70% of that code is third-party code, right? How well do you know third-party code, right? So that introduces a tremendous amount of risk in itself. It makes sense. Like when I was a developer, why would I want to rewrite code about authentication and commerce? There's so many SDKs out there I can just buy. Development, it makes sense. But how secure are they? Will it play good with your code? I think that's the part where it's a gap and we have to address.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great.
Right, folks, moving on. Thank you for that. So we're seeing a whole bunch of threat data globally, which tells us, the number of attacks on our customers' devices and applications are growing. And like Amit said, right, I think apps has now become the center of attention because so many work apps, so many personal apps. And when we step back, there are a couple of things that I think don't really help us make good security decisions, especially with mobile. And we see this even with our customers. They want to be educated. They want more awareness. And these are 5 things that we are helping our customers globally with, because that helps them better understand mobile and make better security decisions, right? So these are 5 myths that when you debunk them, we see most people making decisions very differently about mobile security. Let's get into this. 1, all Android and iOS devices are inherently secure. Amit's favorite question, right? We own our device. We don't control our device, right? And like I said, iOS is a more closed system. So things like malware, you see less. But the new European regulation, we expect that to change. But phishing, network threats, exploits equal on both, right? So please do not assume they are inherently secure. Your employees' hygiene on those devices will determine how secure or will your enterprise be compromised through that device or not, right? So there are things outside the control of just the manufacturer that come into play. So do not assume that. App stores prevent all malware and protect my mobile app. This is the second. Most enterprises sometimes assume if you put your app in a store, especially in the public stores, the official stores, 1, nothing bad can happen to it. 2, no other bad app will get into the store. That's not true, right? And that's really not the responsibility of the store. They're doing everything they can to scan the app and prevent malicious code from being in there. But they can't prevent somebody from downloading your app and reverse engineering it, right? Most malware today, they only download malicious code once they start running on your device. So when the stores scan it, they're not going to find anything, right? It's going to look clean. So there are a lot of these things, as much as the stores are doing, which is commendable, and they will continue to do more, relying on the store to protect your app is not a great strategy. Server-side security is enough. Again, this drives at the heart of mobile. Like I said, in a mobile app, choose your favorite app that you use. The data leaves the enterprise and lands up on your device, right? When I, as a consumer, see the app, it's in clear, information is in clear text, where it can easily be screen scraped or stolen. None of your server-side security mechanisms can really help data from being stolen on the device, right? And that's why malware is so popular, because they don't have to worry about the $1 million you invested in service-side security. They just need to look inside your app. And the most bad actors know that you haven't protected your app enough, right? 4, MAMs and MDMs. This is the one that Amit and I were talking about before. Whether you're invested in a MAM or an MDM, the core objective of those technologies is really to provision employee devices, right, with the access they need to be productive, right? So they do, at scale, they do provisioning and deprovisioning extremely well. You have some MDMs that have some basic security as well. You hear them say, oh, we have jailbreak and root. But today's sophisticated mobile threats, even jailbreaking, rooting, they can hide themselves extremely well. And most traditional MDMs are not going to be able to find that, right? They weren't built as security tools. They have started adding some security features, but that's not what they're primarily built around. MAMs are the same way, right? MAM is a container that allows you to push a bunch of enterprise apps and only worry about your apps in the container, right? When you don't want visibility across the device. It's great when you're worried about privacy. But again, the container is only secure as long as your phone is secure, right? So these things are great, like I said, for provisioning and deprovisioning and giving access. Great. Security is a different ballgame with today's sophistication. So look beyond these tools if you want real security. Last but not least, this notion that phishing comes primarily through your work email is really not true. Because if you look at your device, and like I was saying, out of the 176 apps that I have, only 11 of them are work, right? The other 160 or so are all my personal apps. And that's where I'm getting phished. My SMS, social, right? My personal email. That's where phishing is coming, because they know you don't have anything, right? On the enterprise side, you typically have some kind of a server-side solution to look at phishing, but on your personal domains, we're quite exposed, right? And once your device is compromised, it doesn't matter whether it's work email or personal, they have access to everything. So these are 5 myths that we see really change how people make decisions around mobile security, whether it's device or app, and they're really important to understand. And I hope this really helped. One of the things, let's see, guys, let's put up the next poll before we talk about what's a good place to start.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, there are a few questions as well, Krishna. So we will take that up after the poll.
Yeah, sure. All right, folks.
Probably while customers are answering the poll, let's ask these questions. I think one question is from Jonathan Ocampo. Does placing more priority on mobile security within different cybersecurity frameworks help other organizations convince stakeholders to adopt MDM or MAM? What do you think? That's one question. And I think there's a related question, which is, how do I convince end users that using MTD will not breach their privacy?
Yeah, so let me answer the second one first, right? So the question was, how do I convince end users MTD will not breach their privacy, right? And this is a question we've been getting for years around this. The big notion that I think this is a communication issue more than anything else, right? Most people, when they think of MTD or a mobile threat defense solution, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, they're looking at my SMS and my browser history and my personal email, right? That is the traditional belief. When I ask someone, why are you so worried? They think I'm looking at all their personal stuff that we want nobody to see. But that's not actually true, right? when you think about how we do our mobile threat defense solution, it has nothing to do with your data per se, right? It's looking at kernel, OS, and other things that for us are an indication of bad behavior, right? Now, even when it comes to things like phishing, for example, right? We do one where we have a VPN. We can look at what's inside, what all the network traffic on your phone. But there, the difference, what you're really worried about is not that the solution is inspecting those URLs. You're worried about that it's telling your enterprise what all URLs you're looking at, right? But we don't even need to do that, right? The way we do it is in a privacy sensitive way. We will look at them on your phone, but then nobody finds out apart from you if that's a phishing link or not, right? That information doesn't even go to the enterprise. It's meant to protect you on your device. So there are ways to protect you without invading your privacy. And Mukund, tell me the first question again about framework. Sorry if you don't mind. Oh, you're on mute,
it
sorry.
says, does placing more priority on mobile security within different cybersecurity frameworks help other organizations convince stakeholders to adopt MDM or MAM?
Well, I think so. First part of that question, mobile security does need to have a more explicit role in frameworks. 100% agree. We are working with OWASP, with MITRE, and a bunch of other frameworks, both on the public sector and private sector, so that it's explicitly mentioned, right? Because if it's not, you're absolutely right. People will look at it and say, yeah, if it was that important, some of these security standards would have changed by now, right? And they are changing, right? And we're working with a lot of these. We have some upcoming webinars with MITRE and others as well, because they are embracing mobile, number one. Two, I think when we get them into the framework, what is going to become evident to everybody is MDM and MAMs have a role, and MTDs, or mobile threat defense solutions, have a complementary role. They both don't do the same things. And I think that's the myth. When you think one does everything, that's when you get attacked and expose yourself. So I hope that answers your question. They will be part of frameworks that will help clarify the roles of MAMs, MDMs, and MTDs, which are very complementary. Mukund, is there any other question at this point?
Yeah, there is one question I think that's pretty interesting. How does a single impacted device have a wider impact on my organization?
No, so the simplest answer is that, and I think there are a bunch of public breaches for this, is all they really need is one username password who has access to your systems, right? This is why you will see so many data breaches where a support employee lost his credentials, right? If I'm a bad actor and I want to get into your network, I can go to LinkedIn, see who is in network DevOps teams, because we all publish what we do. All I need to do is target you with phishing on your device to a point where I steal your passwords. One. Second problem, most people, we won't admit it, reuse passwords. So like my banking password, for example, which is very secure in my mind, they will reuse their banking passwords for their work email passwords. Bad actors know this. So there are so many ways that bad actors are targeting and can work back to one set of credentials. That's all they need, one set of credentials. And they can tunnel into your enterprise, right? That's why even one credential that works is extremely damaging to an enterprise. Okay, anything else?
Nothing here.
Yes, Krishna, I have got one question that is about how does this solution, protect mobile application without compromising, the performance and the user experience actually?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? I think if any of you are associated with developing, securing a mobile application, you know that the one thing that is not tolerated is bloat beyond a certain point, which is size, and poor app performance, right? There's extreme sensitivity to that. And in the last 5 years, a lot of people have stayed away from code obfuscation, code protection solutions because of how much they bloated the app, right? And it would slow down, right? So two things to remember. One, security is always going to have a cost, right? I don't care who the vendor is or who the solution is. Security always will and have a cost. Now, what's gotten better over the last 5 years is now there are solutions where you can choose where to place security in the app, right? If you have 1 million lines of code and you try to protect 1 million lines of code, your app is going to become 3 times the size and it will slow down 10 times. But if you're able to surgically say, I only want to protect this function that processes payments or this function that processes authentication, now you're protecting hundreds of lines of code, right? And that's one of the ways to do it is choose surgically where you want to place protections, what type of protections you want to choose. That lets you balance security and performance. Now, the other option is, hey, third party develops the app for me. I don't have that luxury. Then there are solutions as well where you can upload the app, choose the most essential protections, and do it. And the solution will make sure it's optimized for size and performance. But you have to kind of be in one of these two camps. Otherwise, you will not adopt it, right? There's too much friction in this process, but that's the way to do it.
All right. Great. Thanks, Krishna.
No problem. All right. So we talked a little bit about, threats on the device, threats on the app, the myths that, leads us sometimes not to make the best security decisions. So is there a better way to do it? Right? That's really one of the things that we're helping this market as well is there a better way? And there is, right? And this great segue into what Amit just asked is the first way, and we'll talk about apps first, is to understand where these risks are coming from, right? Typically when people do security, you're trying to protect from something. And if you understand where that risk is emerging, you can better choose how to protect against that risk. So if you are in the business of developing mobile applications, whether it's for your enterprise or for someone else, you need to understand that app risk sits in these 3 buckets during development, right? During development, like I said, we are focused on velocity, right? Developers, app teams are focused on velocity. And that means you have to make security trade-offs, right? And this has the potential to introduce vulnerabilities. They might be known to you. You might sign off on it. You might get an exception. But a lot of times we don't understand the impact, right? So we inadvertently introduce issues. 2 app stores, like I said, if you put your app in a public store, there is really nothing stopping from anyone from downloading the app and reversing it. Example, HDFC, Bank of America, Chase, all of these big banks globally have an app in the store. I don't have to open an account in any of these banks to download the app, right? On both the stores, I need a Gmail ID or I need an iTunes ID, right? That's how easy it is. You have to protect your app in the store from someone downloading, reversing, and tampering. That's another set of risks that emerge. Third, and one of the most important ones is your app, even when it's running on your customer's device, you don't control the device. And on that device, it's exposed to the networks that he connects to or she connects to, the apps that they download, the malware on the device. Not everybody's going to update the OS, even though it has huge security vulnerabilities that exposes them. So your app sits exposed on the end user's device. And most of the times, enterprises tell us they don't have visibility, even if someone's trying to breach the app, right? So if you understand that risks come in these big 3 buckets, then you can sit back and say, how do you address these risks? But these are 3 risks that are different and require different type of solutions, right? So make sure when you go back, ask the question, what are you doing in these 3 buckets? Are you doing something or are you doing enough? That would be a great place to start the conversation, and then you can work from there. So before we get into questions, let's put up the next poll, guys. Okay, so now that you've heard about the threats that we're seeing on devices and mobile apps, I'm sure a lot of you are invested in mobile applications one way or another. Either you are developing them yourselves, you are using some commercially off the shelf. To help our customers, we are doing free app assessments for them. Essentially what this is you will tell us the apps you're interested in. With you together, we will upload that app into our security scanning solution. It gives a detailed report, and we will walk you through that report and help you understand what are we seeing from a security, privacy, and a compliance violation perspective, right? Again, this is free of charge that we're doing for our customers. It's a free offer that we have for the audience here. Like I said, it is to help you get visibility into what kind of issues your apps might have, right? That arms you with the information, then figure out how do you want to mitigate these in some prioritized fashion. All right, so we will just leave it up there and I'll let you guys choose. All right, how do we adjust?
Can you just tell the customers how long does this assessment take? How is it administered?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? I think so. This is the way it works. If you say yes to this poll, right, we will reach out to you and figure out, understand what your situation is, how many apps. Typically we do 1 to 5 apps depending on the need. We will get on, we will set up the environment for you. Together with you, we will upload the app. The app assessment takes 15 minutes, right? The solution gives out a detailed report in 15 minutes. You can download the report, review it. After that, we will come back with you with one of our mobile security experts and walk you through the findings of this report. So the assessment by itself is only 15, 20 minutes, but we typically do this over a period of a week, just so that you have the right audience in conversations and we can explain what's going on with the app. So all of this, like I said, raise your hand, we reach out, choose your app, 15-minute app assessment. If it's just one app, it's about an hour investment of your time, right? So it's not a big investment, but no, that's a great question, because thank you for that.
Cool.
I think this is a question that we answered, right? MTD solutions, yes, I understand privacy concern, but if you understand what the solution doesn't do and how it does what it does, there's absolutely a way for us to protect you and your device without invading your privacy, right? And that's something we've been doing for the last 11 years in the market, and it's been very well received.
Hey, Krishna, I missed a question. I'm sorry. The question is, how do organizations balance monitoring for security without violating employee privacy? I think this is a question by Mr. Ehsan Ansari.
Okay, so that's a great question. So when it comes to monitoring, this is what enterprises are telling us. They are not interested in seeing everything you do on your device, right? What they are interested in is when a certain threat or an attack happens, right? They want to understand what happened, where did that threat come from, and what is the impact to them, right? So a lot of times, even with our solution, right, it is looking for certain attacks on your device. Till then, it reports no data to the enterprise, right? They're not interested. As an end user, you wouldn't want that to happen. But when it detects a threat, there's a certain amount of information that we send back to the enterprise, and there's no PII that goes back, right? In a lot of places, you can even turn off your device model and all that if you want to, right? Because we have a lot of government organizations like that. But everything else, your name, who you are, it doesn't matter, right? Our MTD solution is looking at your network, where it came from, what is the exploit, what is the malware, what did it try to do on your device? And very little PII crosses that border. And that's how we balance it, right? Because even your enterprise will say they do not want to know what you're doing, where you are, right? That's not their prerogative. Their prerogative is to keep you safe, one, because if they keep you safe, then in turn it keeps them safe. So that's how they kind of balance it. All right, moving on. again, Amit, this was a question that you asked. I think we've answered this one.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, this is the big one, right? Going back to you, a lot of companies do not like the friction that app security solutions introduce, right? And one of the big friction points is, okay, you told me to protect my app. I protected my app and I released it. Tomorrow morning, a new security vulnerability comes up. Someone publishes that there is a security vulnerability, right? Whether it's the platform, whether it's Android, whether it's iOS, or something comes up. And today, they have to release a security patch just because an external event happened, right? And we were talking to a very large bank, and they said they have 40 or 50 apps. Every time they have to do a security release, it costs them anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 for each app, which is millions of dollars of cost to them because they have to keep releasing this app just for security reasons, right? I understand that. But today, you don't need to do this. Today, there are app security solutions where they update your detection, your protections in the app over the air. You don't have to publish a new app, right? But this is a huge pain point, and we understand it. Even at Zimperium, we spent a lot of time addressing it, but there are solutions in the market today where you don't have to release an app just because a new vulnerability was found. Absolutely, this should be one of those criteria you must check when you're buying app security solutions. Can you ask the vendor, can we update the security over the air? Yes or no? If it's no, then your habit, or you will continue releasing patched releases for security reasons. If the answer is yes, you can tremendously reduce the amount of patch releases you do today, which is a huge cost savings for you. Guys, let's bring up the last poll real quick.
And we have a couple of case studies coming up as well. So
yeah, maybe let's go through the case studies actually, right? So we talked a lot about security trends. What I wanted to do in the next two slides is we have over 2,000 customers globally, different industries. But how are we really helping them, right? What happens when someone says, oh, I want your mobile security solution? What do they experience in the first 6 months, right? So let's look at the first one. This is, again, automotive, right? They had a secure O365, Office 365 initiative going on, which seems to be quite pervasive right now, right? Everyone is kind of invested in Microsoft Office. And 150,000 devices, corporate BYO devices. Automotive has a very deep supply chain, which means employees, contractors, partners. BYO devices have personal and business apps. So on day one, we started rolling out MTD to all their devices, right? They had an MDM. So pushing out an MTD app is seamless. You don't have to really touch it. It requires very little interaction. You can use your MDM and push the MTD app to all these devices in some rolling fashion. And the first thing that they noticed, if you see the key findings on the right, is visibility, right? Till then, it was just academic. Oh, there are threats. Everyone's experiencing threats. Now they're getting to see on their devices, how are they being attacked? What are the risks? So if you look at it, right, jailbroken rooted devices, so many devices that had a critically vulnerable OS, risky applications, side-loaded applications, third-party store profiles. Now, when you look at this, the idea is not to suggest you're being attacked actively, but enterprises very quickly realize they don't even have policies for these, right? They haven't thought about what should we do when you see jailbroken and rooted devices? What should we do when you see critically vulnerable OS? So the big value prop from our mobile threat defense solution is visibility. Once you see what's going on, then as an enterprise, you can start determining what matters to you and build policies around that, right? So this is one example. And again, obviously, if you see the outcome, a couple of months later, they decided they're not going to give access to jailbroken router devices, right? For certain types of devices, they reduced the amount of access that they were giving. All this information was now being sent to their SIM, because the question was, if I'm being attacked on my mobile, am I also being attacked on my laptop, right? So they started thinking and talking about these things to build a more comprehensive strategy. Second example, right? This is bank. Now, I know there's quite a lot of banking customers here. Even in this side of the world, mobile app is extremely important to the banking strategy, right? And this is a bank that we support, 60 million customers. Again, what are they worried about? A lot of bad actors were using emulators or fake devices and opening fake accounts, right? And running away with the credit, right? So think about it. I have an emulator, I open a credit card account, you give me a credit card, I use the credit and I disappear, right? And this happens in an automated fashion. 10,000 accounts were being opened with synthetic identities, all because most of these apps don't recognize a fake device. They didn't know if they were running on a real device or a fake device, right? They were also worried about malware, right? They did not want their customer account credentials to be stolen, because then you have account takeover. When you have account takeover, your banking account knows who you are, right? Then it leads to identity theft, fraudulent transactions, money can be transferred out. So there are a lot of reasons to protect credentials and detect when a fake device is running your app. Same thing, we put our mobile app security solution inside their app, right? This is the same technology we have for device, but it's put inside their banking app, and this is what they saw, right? Their banking app was running on 120,000 compromised devices, right? 2 million devices were vulnerable, meaning they were some way or form, they were vulnerable to bad actors. Transactions on unsafe networks. People are transferring money on unsafe networks. So again, just like I said before, the most important thing for the bank here is to have the visibility to understand, what does the threat look like in my environment? What does it mean to me? Right? So these are two great examples. As you can see, MTD is not just about protecting, right? The first immediate value that you see from a mobile threat defense solution is you getting visibility into what's happening in your environment, which is the most important thing for an enterprise. Because once you see what's going on, then you can proceed to prioritize the risks, choose solutions, and then roll them out. So again, absolutely something to consider. Go back and ask the question, do you have an MDM? Do you have a MAM? How much of security visibility do you have, right? And I think that's a great place to start the conversation. And with that, Mukund, let me turn it back over to you.
Whoa, your sense of timing is awesome, Krishna. We just on the dot. 5. I think we have one question from Ehsan.
Yep.
I think it's a subsequent question. His question was, do mobile solutions differentiate between MDM solutions differentiate between personal and corporate data on BYOD devices?
Well, I think when you say MDM, right? MDMs, typically you have to enroll the device into the MDM solution. So when you enroll the device, you can enroll it as a BYO, which is a personal device, or a corporate owned device. So during the enrollment process, you can register it, and they typically have different policies for both these devices, right? Because if you're a corporate owned, you can wipe the device without anybody asking you. But on a personal device, you're not going to wipe it. So there are ways to configure the MDM to recognize the differences on both and set policies accordingly. And then you can add the MTD on top of it, which is a security sensor on both those devices that tells you when should you enact those policies. So you can do that, absolutely.
Great. I think it's been a great session. Thanks for all the questions and all the comments. Please let us know if you want us to reach out to us at any point in time. We have Rohit and we have Amit. And you will shortly get, all of you guys, those who ask me if you will get the presentation. Yes, you will get the presentation, and you will also get a recording of the session or an email to you. Thanks to all of the people who made it. It was a great session. You have any closing comments, Krishna? I know it's 5:30 in the morning for you, but still.
No, thank you for the opportunity, Paramount, of course. Because I think this, to your point, I think mobile security is a growing concern globally. But to everybody on the call, my big, I think, suggestion around starting this journey is with visibility, right? Whether you are giving access on personal devices, corporate devices, or if you're in the business of mobile apps, start with asking the question, do you have visibility on where your risks and attacks are coming from, right? That's the problem to tackle first, because you can't protect what you can't see, right? So that would be my big recommendation to everybody. Again, the free assessment, if you didn't get a chance to sign up, just please reach out to us. We're happy to assess apps for you guys and help you where we can.
Thanks, everybody. Awesome.
Great, Krishna. It was
Thank
really
you all.
a great session. And the one point I'd like to make in this part of the world is that we are developing a lot more things outside without knowing what is really being done, right? It's a really a gray area, right? How do you cover this? How do you comply this? How do you secure your own property that you are giving to your customer and it's been offloaded by a third party, right? So it's really a gray area which can be looked into this kind of solution that can help you to protect your brand reputation. And then comes the mobile device security itself, right? So they are the two areas that we should do, and really makes more sense in this part of the world with a lot of super apps, supercharged apps are coming up.
Oh,
that creates a lot more dependency to these kind of scenarios, actually. Great.
No,
Thank you.
I agree, Amit, right? I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, guys.